I think we're live. Yes. Isn't this
Hello.
awesome?
This is
Okay.
great.
Well, welcome to today's episode, or my first live podcast. And we're diving deep into our strengths and the 8 elements of partnerships. It's going to be a 2-part series with the fabulous, none other than the fabulous Bridgette Ruiz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is so wonderful. I
Yes.
am looking forward to this. This is a conversation that I think many of us should participate in, listen
Yes.
to, right? Absorb.
Yes.
There's a lot to consider. So
Yes.
happy to be here today.
Yes. And I just want to tell a little bit more about you in case we have anybody on that's not familiar with you yet. Bridgette is a CliftonStrengths coach. Okay. So if you're not familiar with CliftonStrengths, we will touch on that. You're also an experienced capital raiser and you're into sober living properties, right? You have some sober living properties. So, and you've
Correct.
got 24 years in HR experience, if I remember correctly. So you come from the
Right.
corporate
Yeah. In
world.
the 20s. Hmm.
Yes, you come from the corporate world. You have the experience in real estate, and then you're a coach on CliftonStrengths. And I know Pace Morby did I think several Zooms talking about CliftonStrengths and knowing what your strengths are and how knowing your strengths can help you. And so I just love the fact that you could join me and we could dive deep on these topics here, especially with strengths and partnerships, because everybody is looking at partnering up, right? So we want to do it the right way, though, with the right people that we're going to mesh with. And so let's get into this. Let's get into this.
I
So
love it.
how do you define strengths in the context of like from CliftonStrengths and business and partnerships, and how does someone find out what their strengths are? I think that's probably the first place that we should start.
I love it. That's such a great question because understanding ourself is
Yeah.
at the core of any partnership, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's in business, whether it's in real estate investing and wanting to work with others. Knowing ourself is critical. And when we look at strengths, what does that mean, right? And for
Mhm.
those that may have never have completed Gallup's assessment, you can even just think about what's the feedback you receive. What do people say that you're naturally good at, that they see in you, right? That's unique to you. So we are all unique, and even with these 34 themes, the likelihood that you would have the same top 5 with anybody else in the world is 1 in 33 million. So we are unique. And even if you did have the same strengths, they would not show up exactly the same. It's who you are. And so when you think about the feedback that you received over perhaps the course of your career, over just time, people may see these, you know, in your actions and how you
Yeah.
show up, right?
Okay.
And so that could be just as simple as just sitting in some silence and think about what's some of that feedback. But if you've completed the Gallup assessment, this report gives so much information. And I took this assessment, it's now 12 years, I think, 12 years ago, that I took it for the very first time. And I did not have a coach at the time. I,
Mm.
like many, you might have run into the book, and there's a
Yes.
code, right, to get your top
Yes.
5. And I did it, and I was in a leadership capacity, and so I just kind of put it on the shelf, and I got busy and moved on, and never really put a lot of energy and time into it. And so
Mm.
I think as my career evolved, as my as we evolve, right, that
Yeah.
that has definitely come back to I really wanted to learn more about how do I show up and how can I utilize what is natural to me. And I think
Mhm.
everybody can lean into that a bit, and especially when we're talking about partnerships. I'm really excited to talk about these 8 elements, and we'll break them
Yes.
up as you had shared. We'll break them up into bite size, four in the first segment and then the other four on the second, so that we can
Mhm.
really kind of understand what does that look like. But it does start with us. We have to know
Right.
ourselves.
Right, right. Yeah. I think that also what helped me was I knew what some of my strengths were, but when I took the assessment, my number one strength was relator. And I have to admit, when I first looked at that, I was like, what? What does that mean? I does that what? I don't understand. And I'm looking at it and I thought about it and I was like, okay, you know what? If this is what it says about me, then I'm going to own this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to like really focus on working this strength as much as possible. And so I think that you can start with thinking about, like you said, what is the feedback been from others? But at the same time, I mean, for the cost of the book, you can get your top 5 strengths, and it might show you something that you didn't even realize or you hadn't necessarily heard or seen the same way in the same light. And so I highly recommend doing that. And I did that for my son as well. When he was younger, it's like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't know. And
Love it.
so it's amazing to see that because one of the things that in corporate world and school and all of that, we hear, well, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so, you have to think about, well, what are my weaknesses? I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that. And I'm not good at, and I'm working on this and I'm working. And it's like, okay, what I really loved about what it said in the book is that we actually don't get as much return from all of the energy we put into trying to fix our weaknesses. We're not as happy because that's where we're putting all of our energy and all of our focus. And then we're not getting much from that. And so I really love that turned things around so much for me when I read that. For me personally and how I was going to approach things, but also with my team, because I have people reporting to me at my work. And it's like, wait a minute, why am I focusing on all my team's weaknesses? And how are you going to work on that? And how can I help you work on that? When nobody wants to talk about that, nobody wants to think about what they're not good at.
Yes. Oh, and this is a perfect segue into that very first element,
Okay, awesome.
because complementary strengths, right? What that means is, and this is number one, right, of the
Okay.
elements. And this is by Gallup, by the way. So this is not like the Bridget show, and I've not made these up. These are not me making it up. This is research backed, right? So there
Okay.
is research behind all of this,
I
and it
love it.
is by Gallup. And so, for those who are not familiar, Gallup is a management company, right? So their data, their research, their all of that detail
Yeah.
is backed, right, by data. So our number one element to partnerships is complementary strengths. And what that means is that you don't have to be good at everything. And that's okay, right? You don't have to be good at everything, because that means that you can focus on what you do really well, and your partner may fill in the gap, right, of those
Mm,
things that you may not just naturally be talented in, right? And so it's okay. I know many of us are told that through most of our career or, interactions. It's like, well, what are you, well, you have some weaknesses. Of
yeah.
course, of course. And we all should be aware of them, right?
Yeah.
And in real estate investing, believe it or not, paying attention, because I was trained to look at the top,
Yeah.
issues have come up on the things that sit low. And
Ooh.
that was what I have learned over the course of my time in real estate investing, is that you have to look at both, right?
Yeah.
You have to look at the top. You don't necessarily have to try to do the things down at the bottom, but
Okay.
maybe look at your partner, right? And say, okay, well,
Okay.
they're complementing the things that I may not have very strong, right?
Okay.
And when those things align, you're both able to achieve things that you couldn't do if you were doing it alone, right? Because now both of you can help drive that, and
Yeah.
you're able to do it with each other. And so understanding what sits at the bottom, and of recent, like for example, my partner, my business partner, and I feel like we can talk about these things because it's easier when we know what they are, right?
Yeah.
And we can approach it not because we're attacking one another, but we're just saying, hey, this sits low for me, and it's okay. Like
Yeah.
he's an activator, and my activator sits kind of low, and so it's like, great, that means you're going to help us move forward quickly. I might be a little bit more analytical and want to look at things a little closer and slow us
Yes.
down. So instead, I can trust that he is going to be that activator to help us move quicker than if it
Yeah.
was just me, right? I might just sit a
Oh,
little too
yeah.
slow in something. So
That's so good.
knowing what sits low, knowing what sits high for them, and then be able to see, okay, well, do these complement? And, a variety
Mm.
of these themes, like for example, achievers. And I've told my partner this of recent. I said, "Hey, we're both high achievers. That's a really good thing because the achiever,
Yeah.
and many of us who may be watching today are very likely to have achiever very high in our themes, because that
Mhm.
is the number one theme. That's the most popular theme that we see statistically for those that take the assessment. And so if you have high achiever, which is number one for me. Very first
Okay.
time I took it was
Yeah.
number one. I definitely know that of myself. High achievers like to just get things done, right? So it's
Okay.
kind of scratching things off the list. They have high stamina. So not
Mm.
everybody may feel comfortable with somebody who's got this high stamina, but high achievers prefer to work with another high achiever because you
Yes.
both are pacing each other, right? You're able to
Right.
keep up.
That makes
So
sense.
learning which themes complement one another is really helpful, and knowing that for me as a high achiever, I like to work with somebody else who's a high achiever. And so when I see that
Yes.
in my partner, it helps me to express to them, hey, look, we're going to really kind of enjoy working together because we just have that stamina, right? And we're going to be able to pace.
Right.
I've said this little cute story of recent. I said, it reminds me of Winnie the Pooh, right?
Oh.
And some of the characters in Winnie the Pooh. So you've
Uh-huh.
got Eeyore, who's just kind of, right, kind of slow,
Slow
and
going.
then you've got a Tigger, right?
Oh my
And
God.
Tigger, who's just, you
Bouncing
can't
all
keep,
over the place.
yes, you can't keep Tigger down, right? I feel like I'm a Tigger. And so I got to find me another Tigger, right? I just cannot
That's
have an
right.
Eeyore on my
Yeah.
team. Like, and I mean, there will be, right? So
Yeah.
at least in real estate investing, you do get that opportunity to get the energy from other people, right? Do you enjoy
Yes.
their energy, and do you feel like you could work together? And so, like, I'm really, very much aware of that. And I think many of us on who may be interested in this topic probably want to understand that. What is, the energy that I give off, and what's the energy that somebody else gives off? Or even think about when you spend time with somebody,
Yeah.
do they drain your energy?
Wow. Yes.
Uh,
Right.
And those people that you say, wow, they energize me. I just enjoy being with them. I just want to be around them, versus the
Yes.
person who might drain you. So energy is a
Right.
big part of that. So
For
yes.
sure. Okay, so you already answered a couple of questions that I had. So that's great. I love that. I think though, so when do you think is a good time then? It sounds like we have to do this kind of assessment at the beginning when you're first thinking about partnering up with somebody and looking at, are they draining? me, or could I possibly be draining them? And how do our strengths line up? Seems like that should be one of the first or maybe multiple conversations before you put that LLC together then, right? And really commit.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think the sooner the better that you can
Okay.
understand yourself, right? Because it starts with
Okay.
the individual.
Right.
So when you understand yourself and you learn to embrace and know who you are. I really appreciate how you expressed your your experience of, okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't so happy with relator. What does that mean, right? What is
Yeah.
that theme? And so,
Yeah.
giving yourself that opportunity to understand it, to dig into it. There's an exercise that is very helpful, which you name it, which is your
Okay.
theme, right? You
Okay.
understand it, you read it, you learn about it. um, you claim it, which means that you own it, just like you were
Yeah.
sharing, right? You said, okay, yes, this is me, right? And I need to understand, what does this look like? So now you've claimed it. You said, yes, I've heard, maybe you've had some feedback and things, or you
Uh-huh.
even know, like with the relator, you really enjoy that one-on-one relationship
Yes.
with somebody, and to really dig into that other person. So,
Yeah.
knowing that. And then the third part, which is the toughest of all three, right? Because it's easy to read the theme,
Yes.
understand it, own it, hopefully, right? Because that's us being of a growth mindset, and then aiming it. So knowing
Mm.
that, what does that high relator, for the example that you were giving us, right?
Wow.
What are some of the goals that you have right now?
Okay.
And how would having that direct relationship with people, or how you enjoy working with people, how could that, with your goals, could you apply, right? Meaning,
Ooh.
like,
Okay.
for example, let's say you're trying to find customers or clients, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
interact with people. You're more energized by having that one-on-one with those individuals, right?
Yes.
You could be an
Absolutely.
influencer, right? You could be an influencer who enjoys doing it with a much larger audience, but yours might be more focused on, how do I make those one-on-ones? Maybe it's more of a, hey, can I go grab a coffee with you, right? If this is somebody who
Yeah.
might be of high potential that you might be working with. So there's a variety of ways, but when I coach with my clients, it's always individualized. How do we help
Okay.
that how do we use that theme? How do we help you use it so that you're moving
Okay.
the needle, and you're naturally enjoying what you're doing, right? How you go
Gotcha.
about doing it. So, it varies. It will be very unique to each individual, and having that opportunity to give yourself time to think about applying it, which is a
Right.
critical part.
Exactly. Right. No, that makes total sense because I can tell you that I learned about it. It was great. I was very excited about it, but I didn't necessarily apply it, when I got it. And so then I would even forget, what are my top 5 strengths? And then to think about from the perspective of, I have a team at work and I want to know what their strengths are and how can I lead them knowing their strengths, right? There's that leadership book
Mhm.
based on strengths that CliftonStrengths put out there. So I read that book, and I have to admit, I haven't always applied it. I haven't always made that a part of the daily conversation like I should have. So the application is key, right? You can learn all
Mhm.
the things. This is great information, but if you're not applying it, then what are you doing with it? How do you actually grow or accomplish your next step? So makes sense. Okay, so what is the second element?
The second element is a common mission.
Ooh,
So,
okay.
a common mission, right? And so being aligned, right, and having that
Yeah,
strong partnership requires that both parties, right, to work towards that shared goal,
yeah.
right? And even if they have their own personal motivations that differ,
Okay,
right?
okay.
it's still okay so long as there's a common mission, right? Which
Okay.
provides that focus, which provides really that resilience during the challenges, right?
Mm,
Because there will be challenges always.
always.
So you have to both know what that is, you have to both understand that common mission, and really be aligned. And that's when you hear a lot about that during partnerships, about aligning. That is the alignment. That's, do you
Okay.
have that common mission? Do you understand it? And it, do both understand or more, right? It could be a larger
Yeah.
team, which, by the way, I love facilitating team conversations because you see these and how people show up, right? You
Yeah.
see, you know, how your colleagues, when we're working together, how they show up. And so
Right.
the team, I just love the high performing teams, right? Just
Yes.
pulling them together, giving them the space to talk about what they see in one another, because we
Yeah.
all pretty much enjoy kind of sharing a little bit about ourselves, right?
Right.
And it makes it an easy conversation because now you have a common language and you can use
Mm,
these themes with a common language. And even when it's a tough conversation, you might find it's a little easier because it's a common language that
right.
that is shared.
Right. Yeah, I see that. I think that it helps when you're speaking the same language. You have these themes, these attributes, characteristics, and it's not when you're talking about it, it's not as if you're attacking somebody. It's not a personal thing, and it's more of, okay, well, you're high achiever. So what I understand about a high achiever is blah blah blah, and that makes total sense on then why you do what you do, whereas I'm not high of an achiever, and so I'm probably driving you crazy because I'm more analytical, so I'm probably slowing things down. So it's you can have the conversation and talking about each other's characteristics, but it's not in a way that's attacking or putting anybody on the defensive. It's just understanding each other and yourselves more, which
Right.
is huge, right? Because then now you can communicate and nobody's feeling defensive about it. My partner and I have done that where it's like, okay, I am an integrator, thinking about rocket fuel,
Mhm.
visionaries versus integrators. And it's like, I'm an integrator. I'm best at these things. So maybe I should take a look at this. And it's like, oh yeah, well, that makes total sense because she's more visionary. So, this is just another way of looking at our characteristics and our strengths and what we're best at. So yeah, I love it. Makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely. And when we're working together, this is the third element to the partnership is
Okay.
fairness, right? So you're talking about, you see the integrator in you and yet the visionary in her, right? And so that element of fairness is critical, right?
Yeah.
Because you both need to feel like you're valued in the
Right.
work, right? In the work that is done by both, right? And that
Right.
both people feel that way, that their contributions are noticed, right? And recognized. And
Got it.
so, when that's lacking, right? It can lead to resentment. All of a sudden
Mm,
you're diminished, right? That partnership and that effectiveness to do more together, right, can be damaged. And so that element of fairness is the third part to consider,
got it.
that as you work together, do you value one another,
Mm,
and know that it's okay that they bring something different. And we'll get into actually in a couple more of those elements that we'll talk about, really kind of being able to, you know, come with grace,
mm,
come with just being a bit more of open, right, to how others show up, because we can't change people. right?
Right.
And where they are in life, you have to believe them. You
Yeah.
have to believe them. And words, it's actions, right? It's
Mm.
listen, yes, pay attention to the words, but what's the actions, right, of that partner?
Mm.
If what they're
Yeah.
saying matches up to what they're doing, wonderful. If there's a misalignment in that, right? That's
Yeah.
where that fairness piece may get a bit skewed, and you're thinking, this doesn't seem, you know, too fair, because the actions is not matching up with what's actually happening, right? I'm sorry,
Right.
the words are not matching
Words.
up to the action. Sorry. So yes,
Right.
that is where you can
Mm.
run into that. Um, and the fourth element here is trust, right?
Mm.
And that trust for for your partner. So I'll give an example here. When I have a newer business partner, and
Yeah.
I've known him for 2 years now, and it's kind of fuzzy because a lot happened 2 years ago when we first talked, and I was first coming into real estate investing. I was a bit
Mhm.
lost. I didn't know my lane, and really kind of understanding where you fit in. And so
Yeah.
I reached out. He's in North Carolina. That's where my real estate market is, and that's
Okay.
where I was always focused. And I always said, I'm going to make friends in North Carolina. Well, my background, of course, was a recruiter at some point, right, in those
Okay.
early years, and it has evolved, of course. But I always have felt that I know talent.
Yes.
And as a recruiter, I felt energized by the fact that I could meet people and just learn about them and get very curious. And I always have, at least in the workplace, feel like it's a puzzle. And so
Yeah.
that talent, when I know that is needed on a team, when I find that, I feel like I'm putting in that last piece of the puzzle piece
Yeah.
to complete it, right? It's that last. I do have a bit of futuristic, so I tend to have these like
Okay.
mental pictures and images when I'm working in my zone, right?
Yeah.
And in that, I found how energized I would be when I found the right talent for the team, right? When the team
Right.
had that need. And so for me, I've always felt that energy around it. And that's what these themes are all about. It's about your
Mm.
energy, right? Do you feel energized by what your contributions are to your partnerships, to your coworkers at work, to the maybe even a marriage, right?
Yeah.
Like all of these elements apply to any partnership.
Right.
And so trust being a huge one, right? Because you're going to go through a lot of challenges together, and you're going to need to trust one another. And
Right.
going back to my new business partner, those 2 years ago, it's a bit of a blur, but I still remember quite a bit of those early conversations and just working through things. And when I said I was going to do something, I did it, right? Like,
Yes.
you follow through and be
Mm.
trusted that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. That
Yes.
is the most, I mean, that attribute is one of the
Mhm.
most comforting for someone who's going to work with you.
Right.
Are you going to do what you said you're going to do? And you can trust them that they're going to do it. Now,
Yeah.
my business partner and we went and did other things for a while, but here we are coming right back. And I think this was meant to be, right? That
Yeah.
we've learned some lessons, and then we've come back. And so I'm really in a space of, I trust that this was the right timing. This was meant to be this way. And,
Right.
that we're going to do the right things together. We both have high belief, which is also a really good attribute that I
Mm.
find in our themes with Gallup, because there's ethics, right? There's this sense of doing the right thing. And I am very quick now to pick up on little messages, right, of when somebody says something. And we have both said this, is that I'd rather hurt myself in these transactions than hurt somebody else.
Right. Exactly.
And we have definitely talked about that. So, you know, that's how we both show up. We both, I will, when I'm raising capital, I'm treating somebody's money like it's my money,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I want them to know that that is with sincerity, that I am for them,
Yeah.
not in a space to, um, you know, create any harm.
Right.
So that has always been my focus. That always is my focus. And then, of course, because of my HR background, right, and being a kind
Hmm.
of one to, whether it's, onboarding and bringing someone onto a corporate team, or it's
Yeah.
raising capital, it's the same, right? I'm educating while I'm going along, while we're going through these, step by step. So,
Right. God. Okay. So there's so many things that that you triggered some things in my head, and I had to write them down. Okay. So one thing you mentioned, curiosity.
mhm.
And that is so huge when you're having those difficult conversations, or maybe they don't start out difficult. You're just trying to get to know each other, right?
Mhm.
And what are your strengths? What's important to you? These are my strengths. This is important to me. And if you're coming at it from a place of curiosity, and that goes with everything else. When something doesn't work out, okay, why didn't this work out? Let's figure this out from a place of curiosity, not to blame somebody,
Mhm.
not to blame your partner blame you, but let's figure this out. How do we, what did I do? What could I have done differently? Curiosity is huge, 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 huge. And then the
Absolutely.
other thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, no assumptions. Don't make assumptions, because you don't know what's going on in somebody's head. Their actions are there, but that's only what you're seeing. You don't know everything else that was happening that led up to those actions that you're seeing. So maybe there were other things that were going on that you weren't aware of. And so when you're coming from a place of curiosity and you're not making assumptions, you can have a great conversation of just problem solving. Just, what are the solutions here? Let's figure this out. We can figure this out together. And going back to that theme of shared mission, right? We're in this
Mhm.
together. I love, love, love that. And I think I bring that up almost daily in my W-2. I
Mhm.
hear from my team, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Why is she always doing this way? Why are we always having to take care of this and clean up everybody's mess? And, there's all these comments, right? And it's like, okay, well, maybe the reason why they keep asking us the questions is because they're feeling very, very vulnerable right now, that maybe they don't feel very comfortable in this new process. And you've done a lot of studying. You've looked at this every which way. You've already troubleshooted. And so they're coming to you for that guidance. And it's not necessarily that they just expect you to do it or know it all. Maybe they just are scared that they're going to screw up. They have a fear of failure,
Yep.
and so they're looking for guidance anywhere that they can get, right? So let's just be curious. Let's not make
Mhm.
assumptions. And it's amazing how just trying to figure out, well, what if this or what if that? And let's not make any assumptions here. We don't know what happened or what led up to this. It brings everything down. It's like, instead of them being on the attack and feeling defensive themselves, now they're kind of putting themselves in that other person's shoes.
Yeah. Yes.
It's huge.
There's a Texas lawyer, litigation lawyer. His name is Jefferson. Jefferson. No. Yes, Jefferson Fisher. If
Yeah.
anybody out there is familiar with him, and I just adore listening to if you don't follow him, he gives these little nuggets of communication, right? And just
Mm,
how do we have this curiosity? How do we
yes.
present ourselves in a way that we are communicating effectively, right? And that you're coming in a place of curiosity, so it doesn't feel like an
Yes.
attack, right? So you're
Exactly.
not attacking someone, you're coming with curiosity, and that
Yes.
can be a wonderful tool in how we communicate and how we are able to effectively work through, there's going to be challenges there,
Right.
nothing is ever going to be perfect. So
Right.
how do you work through it? So I find his work just to be wonderful, just to listen to all the time, because he does definitely. And as Colleen is sharing, right, giving others grace and holding
Yes.
space,
I was just going to say
for
that.
them.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's a must when we're working with others, because then you're approachable, right?
Exactly.
You become the person that they might actually want to come and talk to when they're feeling a little, anxious or vulnerable, and they
Yeah.
feel safe. They feel safe with
Exactly.
you versus where they feel like they're going to be attacked, and
Right.
not be able to come with the challenges, with the things that they're encountering, because as a leader you're removing those, any of those things that you can, that
Yeah.
can block their success, right? And so as a
Right.
leader, removing those barriers and being somebody who's open to having conversations, and how can you help, them get
Right.
past what might be challenging. So even
Right.
whether it's a corporate related type of experience, or even in real estate investing, right? Like being able to be approachable.
Right, exactly. And the fourth element being trust, it reminded me what you were describing about that. Patrick Lencioni, which I'm probably not pronouncing his last name properly, but he's a big consultant with many years of experience on this, written books, done talks all over the place. And he talks about the five dysfunctions of a team. And the first thing that is always missing in a dysfunctional team is the trust.
Mm.
And what he talked about, which, and I went through this with my team at work. We watched the videos that he has on YouTube on this, and he talks about it's not the trust that is the predictive trust, where because you've known somebody for years, you know what to expect from them. That's predictive trust. This is more of the vulnerable trust, where somebody is willing to be their authentic self with you and show you the warts and all. And when they say they're going to do something, they do it. And if they make a mistake, they're going to own it. They're going to say, yeah, I screwed up and this is why. And I know what I need to do differently. Right. And so you build that trust. That is the strongest trust in showing up as your authentic self, warts and all, the strengths and the
Ah,
weaknesses, right?
I
and
love it. Yep.
and yeah, exactly. And one of the things that he said was so funny. He's like, the leader that's willing to say, yeah, look, I've got sweat stains right now because I am stressed out, that. And you're willing to show that vulnerability yourself, then it gives permission to other people to do that, right? But if you're that kind of leader or partner where you're not willing to admit your misgivings, or that you're not perfect, that you can make mistakes as well, if you're not willing to admit those things, then you're not giving that kind of permission to your partner to do the same thing. And then now you can't do anything else. You have all those other dysfunctions that come, because if you can't have the trust, that kind of trust where you can share everything, then it's going to be so much harder to have any kind
Yep.
of real conversations.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I have learned some real lessons. And once that trust is broken, I'm sorry, you cannot get it back. And I
Yeah.
will, there are definitely the lessons learned in that space. And you
Yeah.
start to respect yourself, right?
Yes.
When trust has been broken, and it's not able to be put
Yeah.
mended.
Right.
You just, no, that's it. Sorry. Like, I respect myself, and
Right.
trust is gone now.
Right.
And I have experienced that where I
Yeah.
respect myself too much, and as should you,
Yeah.
right? If there are um, you know, broken trust. So
Right.
it's how
Right.
we show up. Be authentic, but be humble, right? In
Oh
those
my gosh.
examples of
Yep.
like, hey, I screwed up, right? Like
Mhm.
I messed up. Be upfront,
Yeah.
be forthcoming, and trust can be even stronger in those
Oh
scenarios
yeah.
because they know, okay, if this happens, that you're going to be forthcoming. And I
Right.
unfortunately have had to use that too, right? Go up to some of these things that have happened and say, hey, here's what's going on, and
Yeah.
I'm working through it. I'm doing the best that I can,
Right.
and we will take it one step at a time, and trust that I am doing right by you,
Yeah.
right?
Right. That
So,
goes to integrity, right? That's something
yep.
that I've talked about forever and ever. My team at work is probably so sick and tired of me talking about that. That's one of the core values at work, and I love, 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 love it. Integrity, that's
Yes.
all we have. At the end of the day,
Yes.
it is our name, right? So,
Absolutely.
are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And if you can't, why? Are you going to provide an update? Are you going to follow through with that? Are you going to move heaven and earth to make that happen? Because I will tell you, my integrity is too important to me for anybody to question it, right? Because I want people, just like you said, I want to be approachable. I want people to be excuse me, getting all excited here, to be able to, rely on me in what I say and what I do, and know that I that's important to me. And so, yeah, the so much golden nuggets here. I could keep talking, and I'm sure I know you can too.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but
And we've
I
made it through
think
halfway. Yes,
I know we're only
we've done our halfway
halfway.
point. Yes.
I think this is a great time to
Hmm.
maybe break it for now. We'll pause for now, and we'll come back with the second part, and we'll share those last four elements of partnership, and maybe what we could touch on too. This could be like the little tidbit that we can leave people with is, you know, we talk about how you can have those conversations with a prospective partner and making sure things are lining up, that you know your own strengths to review, you know your strengths, you have that shared mission. It's fairness, right? You've got that fairness, you've got that trust. But like, what if some of those things are not, like, the strengths are not quite lining up? Like, maybe is there such a thing as like too many differences, or how do you know when to keep going? And maybe those four elements will tell us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
Yes.
is,
Cliffhanger. I
is
love
that a
it.
good
Yes.
cliffhanger?
I
Can
love
we?
it. Make
I
you come
love it.
back for more. You're going to
Come
want
back
to.
for more. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. We will be back with Bridgette on the next one. Take care. All right.